Episode 2 of the Dr. Tottenham podcast. I'm Tim, joined today by Vass. As you can tell, we are without Sam and Daniel, but the show must go on. We are here today. Get some formalities out of the way real quick. Social media, you can find us on Twitter at Dr. Tottenham. That's Dr. Tottenham. I'm at TIMMAH621. Vass is at VCon1. We're also on Instagram, same Twitter handle, Dr. Tottenham. Facebook, Dr. Tottenham Podcast. We're also on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button. For listening purposes, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can listen to a podcast. We are on there. If you like the podcast, leave us a review. Let's get right into it. Pierre-Emile Hoiberg. That is the big one that's talked about, rumored to be completed early this upcoming week. Possibly by the time you are listening to this podcast, he will be taking medical, or he might have held up his shirt. I've provided my thoughts on him the past 2 weeks, so I'm going to sit back, and we have our YouTube scouting expert here today, Vass, to give us on Pierre-Emile Hoiberg. And I swear, Vass, if you just say he's a good player and will improve the squad, I am canceling you out of this call. So give us some input on him. Eddie Gomez at Facebook wants to know, what does Hoiberg bring to the table?
Okay. So I've done my 5-minute YouTube scouting, as I've done with a few of the players we're going to talk about today. Listen, I think Hoiberg improves us.
Oh, so hold on real quick. You pronounce it differently. Have I fucked it up already?
Yeah. Kinda, but I'm not holding it against you because nobody knows how to pronounce it at the moment. So you're all.
Look,
I've heard it's Hoiberg, so.
We don't have that O here in America. That's weird. I don't even know how to pronounce that. So maybe I'm messing it up. But okay, so I've learned one thing about him already. I can't say his name. What else can I learn about him?
To be honest, a lot of the stuff that's around on Hoiberg is a lot of his highlight reels. Funnily enough, is showing his best bits against us in 2 games, against Spurs home and away. He had his probably 2 best games of the season, it seems, because that's where a lot of the clips came from. But I think what he'll bring to the game is he'll bring some aggression in midfield, and he's the kind of player who's going to demand more from the people around him. So straight away, that's a good thing. I think if we're looking at a direct replacement for either Sissoko or Winks in that midfield pivot, again, I think he's going to be an upgrade. I know what you were saying last week, Tim, about Hoiberg not being your number one choice. We would have liked someone like Zakaria, but we know how difficult a transaction that would be, even if he is on the club's radar. But he will be an upgrade on what we've already got. And funnily enough, even though we're looking for a defensive midfielder, what we call the number 6, he doesn't seem to be a pure number 6 because he does like to get forward. So that struck me as a little bit odd, because I thought he would be just this guy who would sit in front of the back 4 and tidy things up. But he likes to get forward as well. He's got a good range of passing on him, scores the odd goal. But I think the one thing that we will get from him immediately is his aggression and his demand from the players around him, as I mentioned earlier. So I think he will be a good signing. It looks, as we've said before, almost done. I think Fabrizio Romano was reporting it as a transaction practically done yesterday. So we'll see what happens by early next week. But that's my view on him. I don't know if you've got any further views on him since last week, Tim.
No, my views are pretty much the same. It's a player who fills a role that we just don't have anyone at right now. And so I think he's immediately upgrading the squad by bringing him in, and allows his versatility to play more formations or be more successful in formations we're already playing. My biggest question with him, and I think from what I've seen, he fits it, but do you believe he's a Mourinho player? Somebody who's going to be disciplined, who can fit in the system and do what Mourinho's asking of the players to do?
I believe he is, yeah. And I think the reason that he's essentially the number one target in this window, okay, may have something to do with our budgeting and finances and what have you, but certainly Mourinho knows how we're going to be transacting business this window, and he's essentially put him at the top of his wanted list. So I certainly do believe. Listen, Hoiberg was a bit of a prodigy coming out of Denmark at 16, and he joined Bayern Munich. By the age of 18, Pep Guardiola was playing him in important games for Bayern. He didn't quite pan out at the level that they may be expected for him, but certainly this guy has something about him that good coaches saw early and wanted to bring to their football clubs. And I think he's obviously been a driving force behind Southampton's play this season. And if I'm not mistaken, he wore the armband as well, didn't he? So he's got some leadership qualities about him, and I think that's certainly something that we need, and something that Mourinho will relate to.
And I think that's what you need when you have, a VAR decision go against you in Sheffield and the mentality goes down. I think it's that intangible quality of a leader that we're really missing, and we've been missing for a long time. We don't have many leaders on the pitch, and so he adds that to it. And I think that's another aspect that's not, the actual game, but just him as a person coming and changing the locker room. And that's what we need. We need a shakeup. We need something different. We need it to be mixed up. And so hopefully he can come in and do that. So let's look at the financial side of it. The rumor is, or the reports are, that Kyle Walker-Peters and his deal were valued separately, but it did help us in reach this deal. And so the end net result is Kyle Walker-Peters plus £3 million to get him. And to me, that sounds like a Levy-friendly deal right there. But my question is, do you think Kyle Walker-Peters, $12 million is a good valuation on him? And we had a listener question. Lindsay Barba on Facebook mentioned how I said a few weeks ago he was looking good for Southampton. She wants to know how we feel about him being part of this deal, especially with our ongoing wingback dilemma.
Yeah, for me, I don't think KWP was ever going to come back to Spurs and make that right wing back spot his own. I think Mourinho had some reservations. Maybe some of those reservations were answered with his good form for Southampton, but certainly I don't think it would have been enough to change Mourinho's opinion of him. I mean, I've said before about how Mourinho does tend to make up his mind on a player, rightly or wrongly, quite quickly. And I think his mind was made up on KWP. Whether £12 million is a good valuation or not, I think you have to factor in the current economic climate and also the fact that KWP really hasn't played very much at all for us. So I think they'll be happy to get that. Or maybe the fact that he's English might have commanded a bit more, maybe a bit of a premium. But listen, it's what we're going to get. And in the overall scheme of things, when you compare that to the Hoiberg deal, another £3 million on top, it's just numbers at the end of the day. I think it's good value.
And I think there were other teams in for KWP, and I think you could have placed a premium on him being homegrown, but the result of that is I don't think we would have received as good of a deal as we did on Hoiberg. And so, yes, you could have started a bidding war. Maybe you could have got $5 million more. I think $5 million is pushing it, but I think you could have got $15 million. But at the end of the day, is it worth it when you could risk the Hoiberg transaction, or you could push it even later to where he's not in here very first day of training of preseason, and that's what we want. We want him in here at the very beginning. So $3 million for me isn't worth that when you might net a different result. And also to answer Lindsay's question, I'm fine with him being part of the deal, even with our ongoing wingback dilemma, because what you're getting in this is a backup squad player for a starter. And I agree with you, Vass. I don't think Kyle Walker-Peters was going to play for us. And it's not just with Mourinho. I don't think he was going to play under, he wasn't playing under Pochettino. And he hadn't played before that. I just don't know if he was ever going to come good for us. And I don't think he would have been happy coming back here and not starting after having that taste of starting football and started game after game after game since the restart. I don't think he would have been happy sitting the bench. So it's also from the player standpoint, he wants to have to be here, and he loves Spurs, but I also think he loves playing football. And ultimately, that's what they want, is they want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. And ultimately, if you consider that Everton were prepared to go up to 25 million for Hoiberg, taking a somewhat lesser deal for KWP in order to sweeten up the Hoiberg deal for Southampton, I think it makes good business sense all round, and transaction will be a fair one. But the concern, I suppose, is that, as you mentioned as well, there are a couple of other teams looking at KWP. I think Fulham was one, and there was another. I can't remember who. So it could end up that KWP goes to those teams. Now, if he goes to those teams, does he go still for 12 million? That would be interesting to see. But yeah, ultimately, I think it's a good deal at both ends, and I'm sure Levy will sign that one off quite quickly.
And so with that value of Hoiberg for 15 million, how do you think we were able to get that? Was it the player only wanted to come to Spurs? Was it KWB being included to bring that down? Was it Levy just with his negotiating, seeing a player in his final year who they would lose on a free? Or is it a combination of all of them? What do you think the biggest factors in getting that price? And do you think that price is a really good value for a player like Hoiberg?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of all those factors, but certainly, by all accounts, Hoiberg's decision to only want to leave for Spurs has probably been the overriding factor. And 15 million sounds like a fair price. I mean, we had Ericsson leave with just 6 months left, didn't we? And we managed to sort of ratchet that up to 20 million. But, if you'd have got 20 million for Ericsson last summer, it would have been a fair price too. So 15 million on Hoiberg with a year left on his contract sounds about right, I'd say.
All right, so there's some Levy love, but we have a listener question, Debbie Longmuir on Facebook. She wants to bring up the fact that Levy or any other member of the board never addresses the fans face-to-face. Levy never gives any interviews apart from in programs or via a club statement. We never see him. He's so detached from the fan base, which contributes to negativity towards the board. Our board needs to interact with the fan base. Without fans, there is no club, and the empty stadium and loss of revenue on all sorts of levels is the proof, especially with the most expensive season tickets in Europe. So that's what Debbie says. And, I was kind of with her at the beginning with her first statement, but then she ended it saying without fans, there's no club in an empty stadium and loss of revenue. And I don't see any of that being to how the board's operated, because from what I've seen, the stadium's been full. And I think that's all due to COVID. So you've lost me there, but what are your thoughts on this, Vass?
I understand what Debbie is trying to say. We have to be careful here, because I know Levy gets a lot of stick, some of it deservedly so. But when you have to sit down and weigh up the bad things that he's done against the good things that he's done for the club, you will invariably find that he's probably done more good than he has bad for the club. Now, in terms of communicating to the fans, I don't see any chairman of any club communicating openly to the fans. We know that Levy's a bit of an introvert. He's never going to come out and do a live interview, or very rare. I mean, we might see something of him in the Amazon documentary if Spurs fans are actually going to sit down and watch that. I know I will, because I'll be intrigued to see get a little insight behind the scenes. But there's no club chairman that communicates in that way with their fans. And any CEO of any company is only going to ever use a club statement or some kind of reporting to make known his views. And if you think about it, he does communicate with the fans, but he does it through the trust of the conduit between the club and the fans. So there's no real need for Levy to come out and say anything. So I know there's a negative sort of feeling towards Levy and ENIC as our owners, because they won't spend money or whatever the theory is behind that. And granted, there is some fault to put at their feet for that. But bottom line, when we're looking for scapegoats about not winning trophies and that, it isn't Levy who's missing penalties against Colchester and Norwich. It isn't Levy who's playing Michel Vorm in goal. in the cup competitions. And it isn't Levy who's playing Sonny at left back in the semi-final of an FA Cup. These are coaching errors that are stopping us getting over the line sometimes, and players' errors. So we can blame Levy where he deserves to be blamed, but there are other reasons why we're not sort of winning trophies. Sorry, I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but I suspect there's something behind the question that Debbie was asking that just kind of led me down that path, I'm afraid.
Personally, and I've said this before, I think he's done a lot of good for the club, but I do think the blame lays primarily with Levy and Enoch for the lack of trophies and also for why we were in the position we were this season. I think they're primarily blamed for it, but I don't think him talking more and explaining himself is going to make me feel any better about it. I think it's actually going to turn it even more negative when I hear his opinions on why he didn't go buy somebody or why he wasn't willing to invest in the squad and instead invested elsewhere in the infrastructure. That's going to set us up better from a business standpoint, which is why we're able to, make it through these current times better than some other clubs. So, but I don't think I want to hear from him more. And I think the only owner, CEO, chairman that you really do hear from, the only one I can think about isn't even for English Premier League. It's Jerry Jones with the Cowboys. But that's also because he's the general manager. So he's in a position where you need to hear from him. But that's the only one that I can really think of in sports that you hear from a lot and doesn't go just through official club statements, but he goes on radio programs, TV shows. I can't think of anyone else who does that. And so I don't know why we would expect it from them. Okay, so
yeah, certainly in the Premier League, I don't know of any other chairmen that are communicating openly with their fans. So it's a bit unfair to expect it from Levy. So yeah, moving on.
So we're going to get into some recent transfer rumors, some targets, but I think at this point there's a lot of talk about homegrown and what it really means. And do you need homegrown players? Do you need foreign players? So I'm going to just quickly go through what all of that means and how it really impacts us. Alistair Gold put out a great article about this, so go check it out if you haven't done so already. But for Premier League, what the rules are is that you can have 17 non-homegrown players. A homegrown player is someone who's been with an FA club for 3 seasons, 36 months. It doesn't have to be continuous, but for that time period prior to their 21st birthday or the season in which they turn 21. So what that means for us is players like Juan Foyth. He was able to be listed as a U21 prior to now. Now he counts as a foreign player. He's no longer exempt from that. Eric Dyer, even though he plays for the English national team, he was in Portugal prior to his 21st birthday, so he's a foreign player. Ben Davis, he does count as homegrown for Premier League purposes since he was at Swansea. So with us right now, we have, prior to Hoiberg, 15 non-homegrown players for Premier League purposes. Assuming this goes through, we have 1 spot left to sign a foreign player for the Premier League. Now, UEFA uses similar rules that we're going to have to abide by under the Europa League, but with 2 main differences. They have the same maximum 17 non-locally trained players. They refer to them as locally trained instead of homegrown. It's the same idea, 3 seasons before the 21st birthday. But for UEFA, with the locally, it has to be within your same association. So since Ben Davies was with Swansea in Wales, he does not qualify as homegrown for Spurs. The other difference is squad requirements. You have an A-list, a B-list. The B-list is your U21s who have been there for 2 years. Your A-list is limited to 25 players. There's a requirement that 8 of them be locally trained. Well, if you only have 7 locally trained, then it reduces your 25-man squad to 24. If you only have 6, it reduces it to 23, and so on. We only had 4 locally trained players last season, so our A-list squad for UEFA purposes was limited to 21. Because Ben Davies does not count as homegrown for UEFA, bringing in Hoiberg, we have 0 foreign spots. We are stuck with our maximum foreign players for UEFA. So I think that's really where it comes in, is how many foreign players you can sign. I think it's a misconception that you have to sign homegrown players to not run afoul of these rules, because it doesn't say you have to have a certain number of homegrown players. It's just a limit on the maximum foreign players you can have. So with that being said, us having 0 foreign spots for UEFA, 1 foreign spot for the Premier League, what do you think that means for us on sales, Vass? Do you think we're looking at more foreign players, and do we have to move out current players on our squad to make moves this window? And let me know if I didn't explain. Let me know if I didn't explain any of that clearly.
No. You explained that great, but I think it just sounds to me that we're going to have to shift some players out because a lot of the targets that we've been linked to are foreign players, aren't they? So it looks like we're going to have to move some players on to bring some other players in. And I know that's going to be viewed as balancing the books, and it well may be, but it also seems to be that we need to address this issue about the number of foreign players on our books. I mean, unless we acquire 1 or 2 more homegrown players, then I guess that, from what you said, Tim, I think that means that we can get another 1 or 2 more foreign-based players, because that's what I'm saying. Changes.
No, that doesn't matter at all, because the ratio doesn't matter. You are capped at the number of foreign players, maximum 17. Right. The ratio matters on how many your A list can have for UEFA purposes. We're already at the 17 for Europa League. We can't bring in a Zeki Celik, an Emerson, a Youssef Atal, any player who's not locally trained, and add them to a UEFA squad. Anyone that's over the age of 21, they're not getting in that squad, or we have to leave someone out, like we did this last season. We left players out. For the Premier League, we have 1 spot open right now, since Davies does qualify as homegrown. So we can bring in 1 player that's foreign for the Premier League and not run afoul. And that's what I'm saying. The homegrown, you don't have to sign more homegrown players to be able to purchase more foreign players. We're at our limit right now. And that's where I think Juan Foyth could really become a potential sale or a loan this next season if we're looking at bringing somebody in. Because prior to this year, he was exempt as a U21 player. He is no longer with that exemption. He is now counting. And so that's what's really putting us at this issue. So I think Foyth and Aurier are probably the 2 biggest potentials to allow us to bring in more foreign players.
Well, certainly with right back being an issue, and we've been linked with a few right backs, it sounds then that Aurier has to depart before we can bring another right back in. But
if we want to play in Europe,
2, don't we?
Right.
Yeah. That's a tricky situation to balance, actually, and really we shouldn't have ended up allowing ourselves to get into this predicament, should we not?
Well, it was even worse last year, because you're looking at the same squad. Foyth isn't counting, but you had Vertonghen and Vorm. And then when you had Eriksen also, and when you had Wanyama, it was worse off last year than it is now. I think we're in a better position right now heading into the season where we were last year. And that's where you saw last year players were being left off the squad. That's the reason why, because we were at our maximum. But I think, with the targets we're looking at bringing in, we're probably going to bring in another foreign player. And so that's where I think Foyth or Aurier could be on the outs, simply because if we want them to play in Europe, we're going to have to move someone out. Or it could just be that we say, Foyth, you're not going to play in Europe. We're not bringing you, and you're not being listed on our squad, but we bring in 1 foreign player, and we're still fine for the Premier League. So that could be the situation. But with the swap, with the Hoiberg KWP swap, what would you say our pressing positions are now in the transfer window? And let's look at some of those targets.
Well, we've been talking about right back, haven't we? So Eddie Gomez on Facebook has been asking about some of our right back targets. So we've got Zeki Celik, he's been linked from Lille. Vanch Bansal at VBeats10 wants to know our thoughts on this player, and then we've got a couple of others as well, Tim. We've got Emerson at Barcelona and Youssef Attal again.
Yeah, and Youssef Attal, we put him on here because we had a question about him. Josh Ballou at JBallouGigamo6 wants to know about him, saying I mentioned him a lot last season, but there's been little talk here and there about him now, and wanted to ask, is he a legitimate target or just a pipe dream at this point? And unfortunately, Josh, I think he's just a pipe dream right now. He is still my main number one right back. If you truly want to improve the spot and get someone who's going to be a quality player, Youssef Attal is my number one. But right now, I don't know how he recovered from his major injury. He didn't play at all. So I don't know if he is that same player that we were talking about previously. There's been not much talk about him, especially since the French league ended early and didn't resume. There haven't been those injury reports coming out or knowing how he's progressing. And the rumor now is bigger clubs, Real Madrid, might be interested in him. But to answer Josh's question, I think he's a pipe dream. I don't think he's a target right now, even though we want him to be. So I think the bigger ones are going to be Zeki Celik, who's rumored a lot, Max Aarons, who we've talked about. So to answer Eddie's questions, those are the targets. But Vanch Bansal, like Vass mentioned, wants to know what our thoughts are on Zeki Celik, because he's the one that's being rumored more frequently right now. So Vass, have you YouTube scouted Zeki Celik?
Yeah, I did a 5-minute YouTube scout on Celik, on Emerson, and Youssef Attal.
All right.
And I gotta say, Timmy, Youssef Attal for me is the clear, or should be the clear, number one target at right wing back.
He should be the number one target going for any position in this transfer window, since that's our biggest need. But
yeah,
he's quality. He is quality.
Yeah, absolutely. He is quality. He's clean in the tackle. He's good defensively one-on-one. He gets forward. He makes good passes. Like him a lot. Of the others that we've been linked with, I voiced my concern on Max Aarons last week on the pod, and I think I read somewhere as well that Mourinho's got concerns because of Max Aarons' size, which probably has a knock-on effect on KWP, so they do appear to be a similar size. Zeki Celik, I liked better than the Emerson fella at Barcelona. Emerson, to me, just looked like Sissoko playing at right back. I wasn't enamoured, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah. I stand to be corrected. But Celik, he's good one-on-one defensively. He gets forward well. He's got a good range of passing. His crossing is superior to Aurier's. So I think he would be an upgrade, although somebody posted his stats the other day, and he seems another one of these right backs who's better going forward than he is defensively. But I think probably he would be a good slight upgrade on Aurier, because Aurier, we know he's got issues defensively. He can be reckless in the tackles. Celik looks better than that, so that's what I'd say.
Right. And defensively with Celik, I think where he has the upgrade on Aurier is he likes to mark his men very closely. He doesn't give them the space like Aurier does. Aurier will give them the entire right side of the pitch and more when he's just so far pulled into the center. Zeki Celik maintains his width on the wings. He marks close to his man. So that's a positive on it. The downside is that it leaves a lot of room behind him when you're playing a high press for players who are running behind. But we know under Mourinho, we don't play that style. We're going to be playing a low block, so that space is limited. Lille plays a high press, so he presses really high up, and that can be the downfall, is that players get in behind him. Not the man he's marking, but other runs. So he's going to have to adapt to a new style, but he has familiarity with our staff. João Sacramento moved here from Lille. He's familiar with the player. Overall, I think you're getting a 23-year-old who's been a consistent starter in League One for 2 seasons now. He has Champions League experience. He's attack-minded. He's going to provide a lot of overlapping runs for your midfielders, your wingers, but he's also pretty solid defensively. The main knock, I would say, on him is his aerial duels. He's very poor at it. Last season, he had a 36% success rate on aerial duels, and we know he's going to struggle with that in the Premier League. We know they're going to try and play it over the top of him, and so that's the weakness I see with Celik. But overall, if we go in for a player like that, I'm not going to have an issue with it. Now, I, though, prefer Emerson more. I think Emerson, the reason why I think Emerson's more is I think he's the more complete fullback. I think he is better defensively, way better defensively than Zeki Selek. He's good at tackling, intercepting. He has the pace, but he also contributes offensively. In La Liga, he had 3 goals, 6 assists. For fullbacks, that's tied for most goals and second for assists in La Liga. So I view Emerson as the replacement for Kyle Walker that we have never brought in. That's how I'm viewing this.
That's how I see a towel. To be honest with you, the replacement for Kyle Walker reminds me a lot of Kyle Walker. Well, maybe I need to see more film on Emerson. Yeah,
I would prefer a tall clearly over any of these guys. I'm with you. That's my number one. But if it's between Zeki Selek and Emerson, I think I'm going Emerson. He's a bit younger.
Okay.
The difficulty with Emerson is going to be his contract. It's going to have to be a very complex one for Levy to navigate, and it's going to take some time. That's because he's co-owned by both Barcelona and Real Betis. Barcelona have an option.
How is that even possible?
They split the fee to bring him over. Barcelona loaned him out for 2 years with an option to buy, which is not certain they're going to take up because they have Sergio Roberto and Nelson Semedo. So they're already stacked there, but it sounds like they might view Emerson ahead of Semedo. But it's really weird, and I've never seen anything like this. But if we were to buy right now, Barcelona have to owe Betis a cancellation fee. They have to owe them a sell-on fee too. And so we're going to have to navigate, how do we work that? How does Barcelona get their money out of the deal? It's going to be a massive clusterfuck that's going to take Levy weeks and weeks and weeks to complete it. And so it's a very difficult one. But the player may not want to go to Barcelona. He may not want them to take that option because he wants first-team football to secure a spot for the 2022 World Cup. He wants to be playing. So
look, I mean, if Levy couldn't sort out Dybala's image rights, I don't know how he's going to get his way out of this one, to be honest.
It's an interesting one. I think it's going to depend on if Barcelona wants to take up the option and if the player wants to even move. I think he's enjoying his time right now at Real Betis. He's starting a lot. But for me, I rate him over Selek. I think he has a higher ceiling, especially that he came over. He played last season, 20 years old. I think he's 21 now. But I don't have a problem with Selek. I want to be clear. I think that is an upgrade over what we currently have. And so I'm all for upgrading the squad. And I think that's the more realistic target to get. Now, Alistair Gold said he's not the main priority at that position. Alistair didn't say who the main priority is. I don't know who it is, but he said he's hearing that Selek is not our main priority there and that no contact at this time has been made with Lille.
Interesting. Hopefully we got Yusuf Attal on the back burner, Tim.
Hopefully that's the main target. That's what I'm saying. Sign me up for that.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so outside of right back, where do you think we need to look at improving?
Well, there's a lot of talk about backup strikers, isn't there? I know Callum Wilson has been linked quite heavily this past week or so.
What are your thoughts on Callum Wilson?
You know, Callum Wilson, I was really high on him a couple of seasons back, and thought he would be a great add.
Right.
He had an injury, yeah. In actual fact, I meant to check his stats before I jumped on the pod with you, Tim, because I don't think he scored many goals this season, if I'm correct in my thinking. So, I don't know. I think he's a good striker. He's made, I think, one appearance for England. Is that right? So, he's someone that could carry out that backup role, and then if perhaps Kane isn't available, then he can step in. There's a school of thought that says that we shouldn't just be looking for backups. We should be looking for somebody who can actually challenge Kane. But I mean, you'd be wanting to spend £100 million on someone to do that, I think. Callum Wilson,
his goals
better
last
than what we
season,
have at the moment, I think.
Right. His goals last season, he had 8.
Right. Which is hardly prolific, is it, really, for a striker? I don't know if he missed game time because of injury or whatever.
8 in 35 appearances isn't prolific, and he started 84% of their games. So with me, when you're looking at this position, I think his injury concerns are past him. He played all but 3 Premier League games last season, so I think he's recovered from that injury. I think he has versatility to play as a lone striker if we need him to. I think he can pair with Kane, and I also think he'd be content being a backup. I think he'd be okay making the move to Spurs, playing some Europa League, rather than going down in the Championship and playing there or playing for a lower table side. I think he wants to try and make that next move in his career, compete for something, play at a higher level. I think it's a very safe buy. Decent price from a relegated club. He's not taking up a foreign spot. I think this is what you want in a backup. I'm not of the school of thought that we need to be spending the money on our backup striker to have someone to compete with Kane, because I think the person that we're looking to compete in the future with Kane, we just loaned out to get some experience. I still have high hopes for Troy Parrott, so I don't want to be spending money on somebody that I think would be third in the pecking order when he comes back. The problem with Callum Wilson is whether he's a Mourinho player, whether he is that big target man that Mourinho likes up front. And I don't think he is. I think Troy Deeney's more of that big-bodied target man that would fit Mourinho more. I don't think he's going to play alongside Kane, but I think he's a better backup. The problem with Deeney is he actually had injuries this season. And so whether he's recovered from that. Who are some of the other targets we're looking at, or any other thoughts you have
we've been
on
linked
this?
with No, I think you've covered Wilson fine there, Tim. Nothing more to add. I think you're quite right on where we stand with him.
He's going to cost about 10 to 15. If it's 10 to 15 for that and we need a backup, I think that's some good business. And it's not Dybala coming in. It's not going to wow you, but we don't have a backup striker right now. And I don't think it's going to cause disruption with somebody coming in demanding playing time. So it's not going to disrupt the dressing room. So I'm perfectly fine with bringing him in if Mourinho wants him.
Yeah. There was also a short link with a Brentford striker, Saeed Benrama. Although
and he's more of a winger.
People have said that. Yeah, one or two people have said that the Brentford target that we should be looking at should be Ollie Watkins. I don't know much about either, but with Brentford not making it into the Premier League this season, it could be that a few of their players will leave and get swept up by some of the Premier League teams. So that's a couple to keep an eye on. I don't know too much about them, though.
So Ollie Watkins scored 26 times this past season for Brentford. Now, he was their main central striker, where Benrama was a winger. I'm tired of wingers. Do not bring in a fucking winger. Like, we do not need a winger. Yeah. Don't bring in a winger. I am done with wingers. But Ollie Watkins, that's a very good shout, and I wouldn't mind bringing a player like that in. I think it's going to be expensive, and whether we're willing to spend $25 million for somebody who's viewed as a backup, and whether he's even willing to come and play as a backup, that's the issue. But the age is there. 24 years old. It's a good player, scores goals. He could be a very quality backup to Kane. I think you could probably pair with him as well. It's just, is he going to be happy coming here? But once again, a non-foreign player. And if you're bringing in a backup, we don't need to go get, Nicolo Zaniolo or Arzuis Milik or Habib Diallo or anybody who is a foreign player to come in and take up that foreign spot and be a backup. If we're bringing in a foreign player, you need to be a starter, because we are so limited on those spots right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, no one is envisaging Kane leaving Spurs anytime soon. Hopefully not. But if there does come a time, maybe in 2 years, and Kane decides he wants to go and try pastures new, and you've got Watkins already at the club, and playing that backup role and learning from Kane, whatever, could eventually be a natural successor. I'm not saying he's going to be of the same caliber, of course not. I mean, he's still a bit of an unknown, but it's something to work on right now, because at the moment the only other option we've got is Troy Parrott, who
he's not even an option because he's not even an option this year.
Exactly. So, it's stuff to look at. There's no. The other school of thought is that we go for somebody who is older and experienced, but could come in and play a backup role, much like Llorente did in.
Let's just bring him back.
Pochettino's last season.
Just bring him back.
Yeah, well, that's been rumoured as well. Would you have him back?
I'd have him back. Why not? I mean, we're talking about for a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if we're considering a player like Ollie Watkins, I'd certainly rather him come in because he's going to provide you more down the road. But if you're looking for a 1-year target to fill a role until Troy Parrott gets some experience and comes back in, I don't have a problem with that. I'm all about improving the squad, though. So Ollie Watkins, for me, would be a great target. I just don't know if he wants to come and sit. And that's gonna be the problem with a lot of strikers bringing him in is you come into Tottenham, you're sitting behind Harry Kane. You know that coming in, and there's been agents of strikers who have come out and said Tottenham's not an option because my guy wants to play.
Yeah, that is always going to be the thing, isn't it, with Harry Kane? Dislodging him from that starting role is not going to be easy for anyone. So whoever comes in has to play second fiddle, most definitely.
Right. All right, so we got Jonathan Weber at Jonathan Weber 82 wants to know, what about Easy? He wants Vass's scouting report on Eberechi Easy.
Okay,
am I pronouncing that wrong? I'm just going to call him Easy.
No. No, you're pronouncing him right as far as I'm aware. YouTube scouting report on him. Listen, I like this kid. We were linked with him very strongly while Pochettino was here. That conversation has sort of died down since Mourinho came. I know Easy and his family, from what I've read, have had a couple of visits to the club. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think he is a great talent. Now, the thing is with Easy, he's not a striker. Mm-hmm. Deal with that one straight off. He's more of an attacking midfielder. So,
and real quick, that was going to be my thing where people are talking about him as a backup. He didn't play a single game at striker for QPR last year. This isn't a backup for games. So I'm with you. Get that completely out of your head. He's not a striker.
He's not a striker, no. He's an attacking midfielder. He's a creative midfielder. Think Lamela, but better. Or think Ericsson, but not as good.
He's all right, somewhere in between.
He's got, so he's got a good range of passing on him. He's very clever, very tricky, good skills, nimble, athletic. He's got an eye for a pass, I think. And he's very young still, so he's probably not even anywhere near his peak. But I think this guy can evolve into something really good, and I'd be quite happy to just bring him on board for now and let the club work with him. That said, because we've gone a bit quiet on him, I've got a couple of people that I follow on Twitter who are Palace fans, and it seems as though Palace are being linked quite heavily with him now. I hope that's not true. I'd like to see this young man at Spurs. So, I'm keen on him, but he's certainly not a striker.
With me, I'm with you. I have no problem adding him. He's a very good player, 22 years old, and that's not 22 turning 23 next month. He just turned 22 in June. So this is a young player who netted 14 times in the championship last year, provided 8 assists. He played primarily centrally last year, whereas years before he was playing more on the wing. So there's a player who adds that versatility aspect for you. And I know Mourinho is really big on players with that versatility. Another thing that could play in our favor on this, like it did with Hoiberg and KWP, is Luke Amos. QPR is said to want to make his transfer permanent. I think that could play a part in allowing us to get Easy's price down to something that's more realistic in Daniel Levy's mind. I don't know if he's willing to pay the expense right now that they're asking for him, but maybe you add Luke Amos in the mix, you value him separately, your net result is something we can live with more. Once again, it's somebody who's not taking a foreign spot. He's homegrown. The issue with him, same with Ollie Watkins, he's going to want to play. So is he going to want to come here at all? He started 100% of the games. Didn't miss a single game in the championship last year for QPR. He started every single game. So is he going to be happy coming here? I mean, he's going to be competing with Dele. He's going to compete with Lo Celso. He's going to compete with Son, with Bergwijn. He's going to have a hard time finding those minutes competing with some of these players. But I think he's someone who comes in and adds that competition. I would love it if we brought him in.
Yeah, I think with players like Easy and also with Watkins, even though they will want to play, I think they will at the same time both be happy to be at a much bigger club and on a bigger stage. And they will understand that they are in an environment where there are a lot of good players around them and they're going to have to fight for their place. So I can see them coming if the club made an approach for them. But similarly, I would also see them understanding that they would have to fight for their places and that their playing time would be somewhat limited, certainly nowhere near as many minutes as they would have got for Brentford and for QPR respectively.
All right, so before we get into some of these quick fire questions, any other players you think you want to talk about, targets we haven't gone over? I know we did our big transfer window pod. We've talked about a lot of players. I think this episode we're talking about more of what are the pressing rumors, and we'll come out with that. You know, whatever's being rumored in the week, we'll talk more about those players. But is there anyone we're missing that's being heavily rumored right now?
No, can't think of anyone else, Tim. I think we've covered everyone, haven't we?
What about Gareth Bale?
Oh, my God. Yeah, that one.
That came out this morning. It's not happening. All right, so that's all we're going to say.
No, that's not happening.
Okay, so...
Did you see there was ESPN tweeted about Gareth Bale yesterday, and they said that he's still got 22 months left on his contract, and in that time he will earn $60 million. So
yeah, just
if he's
play
like,
golf and earn your money,
if he's
Gareth,
kind of thinking,
that's all.
Yeah, if he's sitting there thinking, you know what, I've won La Liga titles, I've won Champions League titles, I've kind of done it, then he's not going anywhere. The only thing that might drive him is if he sort of turns around and says, do you know what, I actually still want to play the last 2, maybe 3 seasons of my career. That would be different. But right now, yeah, can't see him going anywhere, to be honest.
It's either do you want to play or do you want to save up to put a par 3 course in your backyard when you retire? That's kind of your decision right now. Sit there and collect that money or go and let them play. All right, so this is a question that I was wondering. It didn't come from a listener, but I want your take on this. Does Fulham's return to the Premier League open up more options for us for loan deals as opposed to if Brentford would have been the ones to move up?
I think it does, Timmy. With Scott Parker in charge, he's obviously got a connection to the club, still highly thought of, I believe. And Josh Onama's already there, somebody that we sold to Fulham. And today there's already rumours of Oliver Skipp going there on loan, which I think would be a great move for Skipp to get Premier League minutes. I watched Fulham play these last couple of playoff games. Really impressed with the quality of their passing and the movement, and I think they've got a really good manager there in Scott Parker. I mean, he's going to be tested next season, no question about it, but things are sort of moving in the right direction, and I wouldn't have any problem with a couple of our young players going to Fulham on loan. Absolutely.
What about Ryan Sessegnon? I feel good about it. I think Oliver Skipp is a great shout to go there. I think it's a good spot for him to go. It keeps him really close to us in London, and it's even better that it's with somebody who came from our club. So I think it's really good for our options moving forward. Also, the relationship we seem to have with Fulham with deals we've done over the past. But I'm wondering, Ryan Sessegnon, if you're not going to play him, do you send him back there on a loan? Would they take him back for a season? And what must he be thinking getting shipped back and forth between Fulham and Spurs?
Yeah, that would be hard for the player to take, but no question he needs minutes. I'm hoping he gets those minutes at Spurs and that Mourinho actually starts to use him. One of the reports that I saw today said that Spurs have no intention of letting Sessegnon go anywhere, which, if that's true, gives me a little bit of confidence in that Mourinho wants to keep him around. So that would be an interesting one. But yeah, I can imagine the psychological aspect of Sessegnon having made the move to essentially a bigger club, then having to go back to his own club for game time. That must be tough to take. So what do you think about Danny Rose? Danny Rose wants to see out his contract, apparently, Tim.
I don't know what to think about that. I'm sometimes of the opinion that maybe he just wants to fuck over Levy and say, you're not getting any money from me. I'm not signing anywhere. I am seeing this out because I'm so pissed at
what
you.
He wants.
That's how I view it. Some people say, oh, it's great to see someone finally cares about the badge and wants to play. I see it that he wants to screw Levy over just once before he leaves to get back at him for not giving him that big contract. So I don't know. Yeah. But ultimately, you want to see out your contract. I mean, that's his decision. We're not going to be able to have any sway on that. That's 100% his choice whether he's going to see it out or if he'll sign somewhere else. But I don't think he's going to get much playing time. I personally would rather see those minutes go to Dennis Kurgan. I think I feel better with Ben Davies over Danny Rose at that spot. It is a spot that we need to address, but I don't think Rose is the answer to it. And I'd like to see if the young player we have coming through the academy could be the answer to that. So sure, you can see your contract out, but I'm not sure if I'd be okay with giving you those minutes.
Cool. Okay.
All right, so
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
We got Mike Chant on Facebook. What do we think of what do we think Ledley will bring now he's part of the coaching staff and he's been named first team assistant?
Just let me get this straight, though. Did I read correctly that Ledley was having some input on the coaching side post-lockdown? Did you hear anything about that, Tim?
I didn't hear anything about it post-lockdown. I know he had come in and done some work prior to the lockdown, but I'm not. Right. I haven't heard on that.
Well, listen, I think it's a good thing. Ledley's got good experience. The club gave him that quite pathetic ambassadorial role when he finished playing. I'm glad they're putting him to some better use. Jose's obviously seen something of Ledley in and around the training ground, so that's got to be promising. I'm happy to see him as part of the coaching staff. Maybe he can inspire some of the players to better, if nothing else, but certainly he'll be able to work on the defence and do some good coaching with the players there.
That's where I was going to go with it. I mean, certainly, he's a class defender. He's going to be able to help us on that side of the ball. But what you said, inspire the players. I think that morale standpoint is one of the biggest things he can bring to this changing room. And not just morale, but actually caring for the badge, which it seemed like sometimes we saw players didn't really put forth that effort like they really cared. So I'm hoping that's one big change he can make with this squad is actually get the players to put forth that effort. Like we talked about a few weeks ago when Wolves went down. They were still trying to get that last goal, even though they were down by 2 and it was only a few minutes left. They didn't think they would win. They were still trying to get that goal for goal differential, where we seen our players weren't doing that at the ends of games. So hopefully he can bring that aspect to the team and change that mentality. And that's a big thing for me this summer is we need to change the mentality just all around this entire club. It's gone stale, and we know it has with the players and with the board, going for that long extended time, not bringing in new faces. So we need a change. It needs to be shaken up. We got Keith Nicholson.
Yeah, maybe you agree.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Carry on.
I was going to say we got Keith Nicholson at KeithBook4. He wants to know if there's a conspiracy going on. Has Daniel Levy put Ledley King on the training staff to spy on Jose?
As much as I'd like to believe that was true, Keith,
you would like to believe that's true.
Say no, that's not the reason. Yeah, I can't see it somehow. Can you imagine Ledley King going back with dossier reports on what Jose's up to?
Yeah.
Photo and video reporting into PowerPoint presentations to Levy, saying, look, what he's doing here and all that kind of stuff.
Because Amazon's not there anymore. They don't have those cameras, so Ledley's going in with a wire. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
All right.
one. Good
So
Keith.
yeah. So let's end on this one. Let's each give our input on it. Final question. Andy Toronto at Coy's YYZ says, "Okay, doctor, give it to me straight. I think we all agree that top 4 and a trophy is our goal for the coming season. With what you're seeing from our major rivals, both on and off the pitch, can it be done? Are we catching up or falling behind?"
Me first. That's a hard one, Andy. I need to get to the end of this window before I can make a proper assessment. It seems Man City are strengthening. They bought Ake, and they've acquired somebody else as well. His name slips me. It's gone now. Chelsea have bought a couple of players. Liverpool haven't really been in the transfer market yet. It's rumoured that Arsenal might be making a move for Willian and Coutinho, but their defence is still needs work. They might have stumbled on a good goalkeeper now, accidentally.
Yeah,
but I think
so.
I think we're in decent shape if we can bring in the 2 or 3 players that we feel that we need. We're not going to be as far behind as we think we might be. I think last year was a bit of a shit show because of the aftermath of the Champions League failing. Then we had the sacking of Pochettino, bringing in Jose. Then we had lockdown because of COVID, loads and loads of injuries. It really was a bad season, trying to integrate a few new signings as well. It really does centre on who we bring in, whether we keep Ndombele and what we can get out of him, whether Lo Celso becomes the player that we saw before lockdown, because post-lockdown I think he was maybe playing with a bit of an injury. I think we'll be there or thereabouts. I don't think we're a million miles behind. I know that sounds somewhat optimistic, but I do genuinely believe that. But I'd like to wait until maybe the end of this window, see how all teams strengthen before I can really give you a strong answer on that one.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. You have to wait until the end to see what actual business we do before you can answer that. But as things stand right now, assuming that this Hoiberg deal is coming through, you got to say we're catching up. I mean, you're certainly not falling behind by making a move that swaps a lone player for someone who can actually come in, start, and improve your team. So as it stands right now, I think we're catching up. If we see in this next week or two and Ndombele moves on, if for some reason they sell him, which the reports coming out are that we don't have any interest, and I hope that remains the case. I hope we can see it through and get this player to be even 60% of what potential he has, because that would be even more improvement and even more catching up. But as it stands right now, with the only business being done is KWP and Hoiberg, I got to say we're catching up. Maybe we'll reassess that next week and it might be different, but that's where I'm looking at right now. And also I would say off the pitch, bring in Ledley. I think that's an improvement for us also. So time will tell on that one. But you got anything else today, Vass?
No, that's all. Just a shout out to the listeners. Thanks for tuning in. If you're still with us at this stage of the pod, which I hope you are, do go and subscribe to our pod on whatever platform you're finding it. Do go and check us out on YouTube. Leave us some feedback. Leave us some reviews on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. It's all gratefully received. And follow us on social media, both on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And hopefully we'll get some interaction from you all there.
Yep. Thank you for staying. Listen to the end. Thank you for listening to just Vass and myself powering through that. We will have our regular hosts back for the next one. Dan is recovering well. He should be back with us soon. So we're looking forward to getting the full cast back together. But until then, come on, you Spurs.